Home studio masters just always tend to sound small, kind of weak, and definitely not exciting. Well, why is that? It's not the particular plugin. It's the strategy behind everything. And so today, I'm going to walk you through step by step my entire mastering plugin chain, which plugins I'm using, how to dial them all in so you can make your masters sound super loud and punchy. And I'm also going to show you my secret for making a mix wrap around your head and feel three-dimensional without sounding fake. If you make music at home, or if you're a professional for that matter, this is a video you do not want to miss. So this is actually a recent mix that I did, and you can see that I have this like big old mastering chain, but I have a lot of these plugins disabled. The reason being is if you do a mix and you do it right, you don't need everything that you typically would lean on to make a loud, punchy, powerful master. So let's just kind of go through very quickly what I'm using, and then we'll go through step by step how I'm dialing things in so you can take this and then start applying it to your music. Okay, so the first thing I have in my plugin chain is an EQ. Let's take a look at what I'm doing. Not doing much at all. I have some mid-side EQ going on. I have a high-pass filter at like 36 hertz. But if you notice, this is something I do all the time, especially for mastering. That kind of helps just to give the low end a little bit of weight. Using FabFilter Pro Q, you can actually get a little bit of a bump right before the roll-off by adjusting your Q here. So normally, when it's set up, it's set to 1, and the EQ just kind of rolls off. But what I like to do is I like to exaggerate right before the drop-off to kind of, like I said, give it some more weight so it doesn't feel like we're missing anything out of the low end. Now, the way I set this, you can solo the sub information. We're just going to listen for like the subsonic rumble, things that are adding too much length to the song that make it sound muddy. So what we're hearing is everything that's going to be rolled off. So this is the bass. We want that. It's musical, so keep going lower. And then like right around here is where we're starting to just get a little bit of subwoofer fluff from the kick drum. It's a little bit too much for this song. And then let's just bypass all these other EQ moves for the time being without. Now, that might not sound like a whole lot that's going on, but trust me, wait until I get to the end of this mix. These EQ moves I'm making right here are going to be the difference between a weak sounding master and something that's loud and powerful and still super clean. So do not skip yet. All right, the next move I did was I cleaned up some of the muddy information on the sides, okay? So these guitar tones had a lot of cabinet resonance. So let me just show you what this looks like. So I've set this up in side mode. It's not technically just the sides, it's actually the left minus the right channel. It's basically rolling off the information on the side. So you hear as I sweep this around, it's doing like weird, phasey stereo imaging stuff, right? Let's find the spot where we're getting a lot of resonances that's happening from the recording. So you can hear right here, we're starting to get like the very bottom of the vocal, and then you hear an occasional like whoa, whoa kind of sound from the guitars. That's what we're focusing on. So let's just go a little bit lower than that, like right there. Now, what always ends up happening in the mastering stage is things tend to just keep getting brighter and brighter and brighter, right? So if you're fighting harshness, like I always have to do in these really dense rock and metal mixes, we have to do something at the top end. So we are going to roll off the high frequencies using a low pass filter. Okay, and I have this set to 18 dB per octave. And we're gonna use this solo button just to listen for the sizzly stuff. We don't want anything that's gonna take away detail or air out of the vocal. We just want something to kind of tame the chaos and the top end. So right here, I can hear a lot of the T and S and the consonant sounds in the vocal, so that's taking too much out. We gotta back it up. Like right around here, it just has a lot of prickly type of aliasing artifacts that just drive me nuts. This is the digital harshness everybody talks about that people hate. Now, using a similar approach to this, we're gonna lower the Q and have this drop down and kind of gently roll off some of that top end all the way up to like 10K, maybe even 8K. We just very gently just kind of roll this off and just kind of help transition the top end and make it a little bit smoother. So we can again use this preview, find the right spot, and then we'll call it a day. So like right here is a good spot for that. So I'm just gonna add touchback. I want the vocal to have presence. The last thing I like to do is right around 2K. This is where like my ears make it feel like it's like an ice pick stabbing me in between the eyes. I will just put a little bit of a cut here. And if you have a dynamic EQ, this is a really cool trick. You can do a cut to soften an area, and then to bring back some of the texture back to the transients, you can actually put the dynamic band back up to unity or like 0 gain, so that when you have something that's transient, like a snare drum, it'll jump up and fill in that frequency deficit so that you get the texture out of like the sharpness and the micro transients. So it's that crap. Like I hate that sound. Too much. Just sounds like we just sucked this mix into a black hole. And I'm hearing a little bit of like a muddy woolliness. I'm just gonna take a tiny bit out. This EQ is like, there we go. We're just gonna pull out like a dB here. Now, at this point, our ears are probably already experiencing ear fatigue, so it's a good idea to go load up a referencing plugin. Or if you have reference mix, you can just drop them into your session and just kind of listen to them. I'm a big fan of Zach's mix that he did on Bring Me the Horizon, so I'm just going to use this to calibrate my ears. His mixes are always so bass heavy. Let's pull up another one. The goal with reference mixes are not to just like try to match the sound of the reference mix. It's to know what sounds relatively flat on a bunch of playback systems. And then when you jump back to yours, you want to notice if anything is tonally way off balance, okay? So mine, while I don't have the exact same mix as this one, tonally and volume and balance-wise, everything kind of feels about right. We're in the realm that we need to exist for this genre. So let's take a look at what this next plugin is. This is probably a controversial one. So this plugin is Curves AQ by Waves. This is their automatic EQing plugin. Now, if you're like, wow, Bobby, you're using AI to master music, you loser, like, what are you doing? Hear me out. I don't think you can just load this plugin up on your master chain and then all of a sudden it's going to fix the mix perfectly. I think what you use this for is to get some other opinions on what the mix could sound like, to know stylistically if you're going in the right direction or not. You can load this plugin up and then it calculates basically some EQ shapes to make it fit more stylistically with what it thinks the song is. So I'm going to bypass this plugin. We're going to listen to the song and then I'm going to click through the generated basic presets that it's made for me. And if one of these is like, oh, I love what that did to the guitars, we can start there, dial it back so it makes sense to the mix, and then use that to build off of. Okay, check this out. So this makes it sound a lot more exciting, but the cymbals are a little too bright for me. This is too dark for this song. Not digging that. So I do like the brightness it adds. Right? I think it adds a little bit of clarity. You're getting more definition. I hear the background harmonies more. It's just too much. So what we can do is just dial this way back and then just kind of subdue the effect, but allow it to just kind of shape the mix in a little bit more musical way that works better for the genre, that isn't normally intuitive if you're using traditional tools like FabFilter Pro Q, right? Just something like that, right? So now that we got the tonal balance in there, let's talk about the next thing that's super important that I also see so many home studio musicians mess this up. And that is setting up their bus compressor so that they get punch, glue, and vibe to their master. If you have the wrong settings, things get kind of crazy and they don't sound good. Let me show you how to fix that. I have a little bit of this sidechain filter. So what this does is it doesn't allow the compressor to react to frequencies that are like under 75 hertz. That's not exactly the case because there's some roll off with that. So it just makes them less sensitive to the sub frequencies. So that way you're not getting this like crazy pumping when you have like a powerful kick drum that's hitting. I have the mix set to 55%. That means that we're doing some parallel compression. We don't have the full mix going through just this compressor. It's 55% of the mix is going through the compressor. The other 45 is being left untouched, okay? I have ratio set to 4. That's pretty aggressive on a master bus, but I like the sound that SSL style compression has on a master bus. And to get that punch, I'm keeping it at a ratio of 4, but that's why I have this set not to 100%, because otherwise it'll be too much. Here's the other very important parts: the attack time and the release time. Attack time is at 10 milliseconds, release is at 0.3, okay, 300 milliseconds. Why did I get to those settings? Attack is gonna let the impact come through. Too much attack doesn't allow the mix to glue together, and so you start getting separation between your transients. The release time, think of this as distortion, aggression. The shorter the release, the more distorted and in your face it's gonna feel. The longer the release, the smoother, more vibey it gets, okay? So there's a sweet spot with rock and metal between about 0.1 and 0.3. A lot of people like using the auto feature as well. That's another good setting. But I think anything over here, it's just kind of weird for rock and metal. So what we'll do is we'll start with a very fast release to dial us in, and then we'll just go through the attack times and find one that feels punchy. And to do that, we're gonna be really aggressive. So we're gonna take this threshold and bite into the track really hard, and we're gonna set the mix to 100%. We need to hear what the compressor's doing. If you don't set it up this way, you'll never hear it, okay? So check this out. A lot of punch here. The 3 milliseconds are starting to get like a splattiness, which I kind of like. This is making the snare and kick a little bit too punchy. So the secret is going to be living in between like 3 and 10 milliseconds, I think. So let's set it to 10, okay? That's a really nice spot. Now let's dial in the release. We're gonna just listen to the aggression and the smoothness of everything. Given that this is a pretty fast song, it's probably gonna be, we're gonna want a shorter release time. If you want maximum volume, short release time. If you want it to feel a little bit more natural and have a little bit more breathiness to it, you want a little bit longer time. The auto sounds great if you're okay with it just being a little bit chill and you're sacrificing overall loudness. For me, the 0.3 still felt the best. Now, what I want to do is just kind of adjust this threshold so that we're just taking, somewhere between 1 to 3 dB max. Too much. Right there, it feels good. The kick's punchy. Everything is nice and punchy. Now let's adjust this mix. It's right around 55% for me is the magic number. So now we have a nice punchy kick, snare is punchy. The other thing I should mention when you're dialing in compression is listen to your transients. That's what you care about. If you start making the attack too fast, you're going to lose all the punch out of your snare and your kick. It's going to sound flat and lifeless. That is why we have to add some attack time to it, even though you might be thinking, oh, but like limiters are just going to obliterate everything. It doesn't matter. You need to have some attack in there to let stuff breathe, or it's going to collapse and feel smaller by the time you get to the actual limiter. I have a free gift for you. In the description, you can pick up my Compression 101 ebook. It's going to teach you a lot of the same strategies that I used in this video for how to hear compression and dial in the exact right settings so you can make your music sound punchy and full. Again, that's totally free. You can get that in the description. Let's talk about some cheat code plugins, shall we? Let's talk about how we get the loudness. This is annoying, right? I use inflator on a lot of my masters. This is the setting I use for this particular track. Let's hear it with and without it. Now you might be like, it doesn't sound like it's doing anything. That's, first of all, not true. It does a lot to the low energy of the mix. I feel the kick drum blossoming, but it's still tight because we cleaned it up with that EQ initially. See, that's why we do all those cool things early. The other thing it's doing is adding a lot of density to the track, but you can't necessarily hear it because I've already gain matched it. If you don't offset the output gain, let me show you what happens. You're going to listen to this plugin, and when it's on, you're going to be like, wow, it sounds so much louder. It's so much better. And so it's very easy to fool yourself into thinking that what you're setting up sounds better. This setting just happens to work, but you might come here and just keep riding this effect knob up. Because you think it sounds better, but it's really just making everything louder and louder and louder and adding all this distortion. And what you're not noticing is you're losing the punch of your mix. So that's why it's super important that as you set this effect knob up or this curve knob up, you have to come back and then adjust the output and then do the bypass to make sure that it's the same level the entire time. Because now you can actually make a better judgment if this is what you want your song to sound like. All right, it took me like 10 years to figure out a way to make my mixes sound more 3D, and I'm going to reveal all that to you right now. So check this out. There's a few strategies I use for adding maximum width to my music. This is the one I've been loving recently, Abbey Road's RS-124 plugin by Waves. This is like my secret sauce on a lot of this crap. And you know what? I'll save this preset so you can just load it up if you happen to have this plugin. And if you're a Rayton Production supporter, I'll put this in the community so you can go and download this. All right, so check this out. The way that this is set up is normally you don't see any of this stuff. It normally is like this. So I have it set to studio mode. I have the auto hold on. I have the recovery fast and then slow on this one. I don't have any auto makeup. And then you can see my input controls. Okay. Now, when we go to expand, let me show you what's going on under the hood here is I have it set to stereo. I have it from stereo here to mid side. Okay, so that's going to separate the middle channel from the side channel, just like what we did with EQ. So now I'm just going to adjust the compression and the volume of the side channel. Okay, we're going to leave the center one alone, and we're just going to adjust this until we start getting density in volume so that it feels like there's a nice, flat stereo image in front of us. Okay, so how do we do that? We're going to set our mix to 0 for the middle. Okay, the mid channel. And then for side, we're going to ride this up and just kind of listen to it. So we have this both set to its default setting, and we're just going to ride the mix knob up on the side channel and listen to what happens to the sides of the mix. You hear how everything's starting to get a lot more dense. We're starting to hear the side harmonies a lot more. That is the beauty of this plugin. And we can adjust the sound and the style of that by playing with the recovery time here. This is going to make it faster or slower. So if you want a really aggressive in your face side kind of feel, you can go to a fast recovery time. I think it makes it just feel a little bit too chaotic and uncontrolled. So I like to go to a slower setting here. And then what we'll do is we'll adjust the input control to then drive into this compressor and start adding compression to the sides. And that's going to help glue everything together. Check it out. And don't be afraid to push into this compressor at this point, because we just want to hear the movement. We want to hear what it's doing to the mix. When we find something that feels about right, that's when we're going to go to this mix knob and dial this all the way back. So we're just adding a sprinkle of that width and that glue and density to the sides. So it's really easy to get carried away with this. This is when you'd want to pull up your references again and check to make sure it's not getting too wide or feel like it's wrapping around your head in a weird way. But right around here is, I think, a safe bet. Usually with stereo widening stuff, you find what you think sounds good and then back it off a little bit more. Okay, it's always too much. That's the secret sauce, ladies and gentlemen. What else we got? We got Gulfoss. This is like again an automatic EQ, dynamic EQ thing where it just goes and tries to make your song fit a target. All right, so check this out. It's adding a nice brightness to the sides that I really appreciate without it ever getting like muddy and weird. So what I want to point out is that this plugin tends to make, in my opinion, the mix always sound too bright. So if you look here, I have the brightness down like almost 20%. And I have the tame up to 18. And then recover is basically like how fast does it want to swell the dynamic EQ that it's doing back to like its target. Now, one other thing I want to point out is that there are these little things, I don't know what they're called. I call them curtains, but you can adjust that. And what that does is it tells this plugin, don't mess with anything past this frequency, okay? So if you look without that curtain, it's adding a lot of extra stuff here. And I find that it's always on the bright side. So I always tend to roll this off to like 6 or 7K. And then the sub energy I have it not messing with anything below what looks like 30 hertz. Yeah, 30 hertz. Otherwise, it could maybe sometimes add a lot of this really subsonic energy that I think just eats up headroom. And that's how you use Gulfoss. You're welcome. Now, the next plugin I'm going to show you, you have to dial it in just right or you will ruin your mix. Check this out. It's Soothe by Oak Sound. Plugin is incredibly powerful. It works so well. It takes out harshness and resonance out of your mix, which is like really, really hard to do from standard EQ methods. The problem with this plugin is it can do way too much. It sounds like it's taming the top end, but it takes away all the excitement. Rock and metal is exciting and aggressive and abrasive. If you nuke it, you ruin the mix and you ruin it very quickly. The best way to fight that is with this attack knob right here. Let me show you the difference. You probably heard that immediately. It sounded like everybody just got a fat tongue, and it just sounds like a weird, weak, pathetic mix now. But watch what happens as we open the attack up. We start letting a little bit of that harshness come back through. We're getting the transients and the microdynamics back on the vocals and the cymbals, which make it sound normal. And a really easy way for us to figure that out is to go to this delta mode down here, and you can listen to what Soothe is taking out. If it sounds musical, we're taking out too much. You got to keep dialing this attack knob up more and more and more. We just want it to sound harsh and nasty. Too musical. Right here, we're like right on the verge of it being musical and harsh. Yeah, like right there is pretty good. Now we can take it off delta, and the final part to dial this in is with this mix knob, okay? We know that we're now removing the grossest stuff out of the mix, And we're going to keep shrinking this down until it feels about right. And then, like I always say, pull a little bit more out. Without. So, I mean, it sounds passable, but we lost the energy and the sparkle and the air and the height, right? So let's get this mix down where it needs to go. So we could, again, go to the delta and dial this in. To me, that's about the right level that we need it at. Without. Now, if you didn't hear anything, that's okay. It's subtle and it moves around, so it's hard to really identify that. That's why we have to do it in delta mode. We go through all the trouble of doing these small adjustments the entire way because of the last step, which is super important. It's also what is going to dictate how loud you can make your mix. And that is running this now through a clipper or a limiter to finalize it. Normally, I'm a clipper and then feed into a limiter kind of guy, but Waves actually came out with a really good limiter update with their L4. And this thing, I'm having a hard time going back to the Pro L2 with my favorite clipper, which is Newfangled Audio. They just kind of got something right here. It's super CPU intensive, but it's hard to make it sound bad, and you can get stuff stupid loud, okay? And it has built-in clipper and a bunch of other crap. So let me just show you my favorite settings for this plugin. And you know what? I'll save this preset too for all you guys. So for rock and metal, the mode I like to use is aggressive. And then the release, I leave it alone usually. Clipping, I turn up, but this basically tells the plugin to use more clipping behavior. And then stereo linking is usually on, but I turn it to 0. Reason for that is it gives it a little bit more width, right? Check this out. Let me see if I can really do a lot of compression here so you can hear the differences in the stereo width when you unlink everything. Especially with the drums, like listen to the drum cymbals, you'll feel like they kind of get quiet and maybe kind of come in a little bit, but when it's unlinked at 0%, it just feels free and wide. So they also added this upward compression thing. This is kind of like a loudness cheat code, in my opinion. As long as you don't use too much of it, because it can get kind of insane and it can kind of really throw off the natural dynamics of your song. But I like to set this to like around 1, maybe a little bit under 1. And it's just going to constantly ride the song so that it stays really loud and in your face. And you won't believe how loud you can get stuff to sound. So the way I recommend setting this up, if we go back to normal for everything, is click on this guy and just pull it down, and that's going to lock the threshold and ceiling together. You can also click this delta button. That's a good idea. That'll let you hear the crackling and hear how much artifacts you're adding into the song, but it's up to you what you want to do. So check this out. So we're listening to what's changing in the audio. So a lot of artifacts. And if we take that away and just hear the sound as we crush this down, check this out. What blows my mind is how they're able to get 9 dB of gain reduction with a limiter, and the kick and snare still kind of sound punchy, right? Right here is very aggressive. It's starting to feel like the mix is starting to collapse on itself. So I think that's too much. I keep going to right around here. And if you take my advice, when you think you got it right, go back a little bit more. All right. And so the output level is just going to be like 0.2 dB full scale. That's typical for like mastering for a CD. I like to do this because it gives it a little bit of space for transcoders and stuff like that. Now, with everything being digital, you probably want to add a dB of headroom. That'll let the transcoding for the lossy formats like MP3 have a little bit of space to play with. It's totally up to you, though. There's no rules. I don't recommend going to 0. 0.2 is like the sweet spot, in my opinion. Let's just see what we get in terms of short-term LUFS using this mastering chain, and we'll do a final comparison to where we were originally. It's going to be loud. I'm going to turn it down so I don't blow my ears out. So pretty good. We saw 7. Minus 6.4 LUFS. I mean, it's pretty aggressive. This is right around the ballpark. If you wanted, you could squeeze out a little bit more, but I feel like you're going to start taking away from the natural punch of the song. Let's do a little A/B to compare to what the difference is from the unmastered to the currently mastered version that is appropriately gain matched. Okay, so you can actually hear what all these different things did to the sound of our track. And then I got one more thing after this that you have to see as well. All right, here we go. I'm stuck playing in a dream, hoping I'll be waking up out of fantasy. Wow, we really cleaned up a lot of the harshness. The unmastered version was kind of pointy, and then we added this glue and density to the mix that filled in the gaps using all these different strategies that I showed here. So now, what I want to do is give you a true comparison of what this song would sound like if we didn't go through the mastering process I just showed here, and we normalized it to the same level that I did for this, okay? So I've exported a section of the song unmastered, and we're going to normalize this to match this ceiling level. So you can hear the difference in volume that you get if you were to like listen to this on a streaming platform, and tonal balance, and then also the image to just really see how much mastering can actually do to your music. So let's normalize to 0.2. Okay, and we're doing peak normalization, not loudness. Bam. So there you go. So this is basically what the streaming platforms would do to your song. Here we go. Let's start with mastered. Let's just mix it up. All right, here we go. Oh my God. Wow. That actually surprised me that it made that big of a difference. So if you like what you saw and you're like, you know what, that was cool that you showed me that stuff, Bobby, but really I'd rather just have a pro do it, I can help you master your music. If that's something you're interested in, my contact info is in the description. Also, if you're like, that's cool, but I want to go deeper on mastering, I also have a complete start to finish course on mastering. I have details and a coupon code in the description as well. Check that out. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when I drop new videos. And if you know somebody who's struggling with getting their music to sound pro, share this video with them. This is 20 plus years of mastering experience distilled into the most pure form of knowledge. All right, I'm tired. I got to go to bed. I'm Bobby Balo, the mixing and mastering engineer at Rayton Productions. I'll see you in the next video.